Hello, I am Goa'uld, and welcome to another episode of Science Fiction Power Scaling. And today I'm going to do something a bit different from the previous episodes, and I'm going to look specifically at some of the basic Goa'uld power scaling of the spaceships in Stargate SG-1. So there are other spaceships that I haven't mentioned here, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But for now, the basic scale on the most easily scalable Goa'uld ships, you've got the Death Glider, which is the main fighter of the Goa'uld. It's important to note that the Death Glider itself cannot operate FTL, at least not to my knowledge, and therefore should not be used independently of either a ground base or a mothership of some sort, like a Hatak, usually. And as such, the Death Glider is a pretty common ship to see, but it's definitely weaker than the Alkesh, which is described as a form of bomber of sorts, and it's definitely a lot larger than the Death Glider, but it's smaller than the Hatak, which is the main mothership of the main carrier of the Goa'uld. The Hatak is also notable for being just the primary capital ship that the Goa'uld use in Stargate. Apophis's mothership is a unique ship that is used by Apophis, and according to the wiki that I read, it may have originally been designed for use by Sokar, but of course Apophis took over Sokar's army, and as such, Apophis would acquire Sokar's hardware, such as the mothership. It is notable that Apophis's mothership is significantly larger than the Hatak, but generally speaking, I don't think it's that much different in design. It's just a lot larger, but it's not a scaled up version. That's not what I'm trying to say. And it's also notable that in Apophis's fleet, there are Hataks that are capable of cloaking, which is definitely an advantage. Maybe I should have inserted an extra entry for Apophis's cloaking Hataks. That may have been a good thing to do, just to add an extra entry in there. Anubis's mothership is, of course, the most powerful Goa'uld ship that I think we see in Stargate, and it has it's pretty large. That's one thing. I think it's even larger than Apophis's mothership, and in addition to that, it has a weapon that, when fully operational, can fire upon a planet and essentially eradicate the surface of the planet. But there is the potential condition. This is what I read on the wiki, and it is consistent with what I see on screen, is that in order to actually do that, you have to hit the Stargate that's on the planet. So that may be a limitation to the use of the weapon. However, I'm not entirely sure as to how accurate that is. I have to do some extra research on that just to be sure before I mess up or say anything more on that. And that's generally the power scale for Stargate SG-1's Goa'uld ships. Now, of course, there are other ships, the Teltak, and there's modified versions of the Teltak, which is a small cargo ship, or transport, very small. Then there's an unnamed class of Goa'uld's transport ships, which look a bit like the Teltak, but are significantly larger, about the size of an Alkesh. I'm not being exact here. We don't know whether or not they have any weaponry, so, or at least I haven't seen SGUs, so that it may have been in there. But additionally, there's also the Pyramid Lander, or the Cheops class, as some people like to call it. I don't know if it's called that in canon, or on screen is what I mean, but it's shaped like a pyramid, but has on the bottom it has an indentation in the shape of a pyramid, and that is because it lands on top of pyramids. And I don't know how well that compares to the Hatak. I'd think that it's probably similar, but it may have different roles. I don't know exactly how powerful it is. I don't think we've actually seen a pyramid lander unleash its full firepower, unlike with a Hatak. So power scaling that is going to be a bit difficult. And I think that's really all I've got to say on that. Oh, one thing regarding feats. When doing feats in regards to the Hatak, there's one important thing that I think some people fail to ignore, but that they really should, or not ignore necessarily, but fail to understand correctly. There is an episode, I think it's the first episode of season 2, or is it the last episode of season 1? But it's a two-parter, so it doesn't matter that much. But in this episode, there's a nuclear missile launched from Earth there's two nuclear missiles, and they are launched from Earth to hit Hataks, specifically the Hataks of Apophis and Chlorel. So, and it's the thing that's special about these nuclear missiles is that they have been enhanced with Nakoda and have an estimated yield of in excess of a gigaton. In other words, that's a pretty powerful missile, seeing as the largest nuclear bomb ever detonated is only 50 megatons, which is 20 times less powerful than each individual one of these missiles. And what we see is that the missiles collide with the shields of the Hatak and don't do any damage. Now, someone who hasn't really listened to the dialogue properly may think that this means that the Hatak shields are necessarily capable of surviving an impact in excess of 1 gigaton of TNT equivalent, which I haven't really looked at the numbers themselves on various feats, so I don't know whether that would be accurate. However, I can discount this specific feat and say that it isn't a feat, and the reason it isn't a feat is because if you look in the dialogue, the missiles impacted the shields before detonating. In other words, the missiles never detonated. So if you drop a nuclear bomb and it doesn't detonate, it just hits the ground, and maybe if it's the type of nuclear bomb that detonates from a conventional explosion inside the bomb that then causes the bomb, the nuclear bomb itself to explode inside of the bomb, then I think it has historically happened in Operation Chrome Dome, in which the United States was moving nuclear bombs around 24/7 for a couple decades, where occasionally there would be an accident and a plane would crash or a bomb would drop. And I think it has happened that a bomb has exploded partially, but the actual big boom hasn't happened. So what I'm trying to say here is that it's possible for a bomb to get destroyed without actually detonating, which is something that should be pretty common sense. But I'd just like to mention it just in case there's anyone who's unfamiliar with how bombs work. For example, if I were to throw a stick of dynamite that hasn't been lit and it hits some guy in the head, it's probably not going to explode. Now, if it's been lit and it hits some guy in the head and then the fire actually hits the dynamite itself, then it's going to explode. Or what if it's lit and it hits but the fire goes out, or it hits and it drops because the fire didn't get all the way and then it explodes, or what I'm trying to say is there's a number of different ways for an explosive to hit a target without detonating. And that is exactly what the dialogue states happened in that situation. Therefore, I cannot take that as a feat for the purposes of power scaling or for the purposes of facts in general. But that being said, I certainly would appreciate if anyone out there has knowledge on what some sort of feats would be in relation to attacks. In addition to that, if anyone would like to collab with me, if you would like to appear in this show, if you would like to offer any support of any kind, maybe artwork, maybe even, I don't know, just feel free to contact me. You can go on the description segment of my channel page and you will be able to reach me via email, or you can contact me in the comment section below, which is a lot easier to do. If you try to connect to me using Twitter, it's probably not going to work because I'm not on Twitter all the time. So just saying. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and if you have any suggestions to make, maybe I made a mistake somewhere, I would be happy to hear that so that I can correct the mistake. And I will be seeing you all next time. Manawilto's over and out.